Hi, Tony. Thanks so much for joining us today to tell us a little bit about your experience working with JumpCloud. But before we get going, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your MSP?
Sure. Yeah. So Umzuzu is the name of the MSP, and was founded in 2008. So founded from the beginning to be a cloud brokerage, services related to cloud services. At the time, Google was really about the only game in town that was doing anything with cloud services. And that'd be Google Apps for your domain, which became Google Business, which became Workspace to the current product. So we're based in Kansas City and have been doing this for about 15 years. Since founding, we now work with O365, we work with JumpCloud, we work with RingCentral and some other cloud-related services.
Okay, cool. That's a good background. And I guess from what you described there is you came to the game in a sort of serverless era. So you've not got a lot of that legacy sort of support for on-premise servers, which a lot of other MSPs are dealing with.
Yeah, that's actually been the overarching guidance for our business, is the elimination of on-premise servers and infrastructure, moving things to the cloud. Kind of, if we're doing it in a browser, we're doing it right. If we're using cloud services, we're doing it right. If we're relying on a location or infrastructure internally, that's what we're there to help people transition away from.
Okay, that's cool. And you mentioned that you are working with Microsoft with sort of Windows 365, but you're also sort of Google Workspace. What are the sort of main differences from that point of view that you would see?
Sure. Yeah. So in some ways, our O365 business is objection handling. Hey, we need Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And we're like, okay, we can provide you logins for that, and we can charge you for those licenses. On the Exchange side, doing mail migrations, it became, early on, BPOS was a mess, Microsoft's cloud service. It's gotten better and better over the years. So we have clients that need to move from one cloud to the other for one reason or another. They get purchased by another company that's already on O365, so we have to migrate them from Google to O365, or they're on O365 and they want to be on Google. So nowadays, we're doing less work that's on-premise to cloud and more from one cloud to the other. So the same tools that we use on Google are the same tools that we use on Microsoft for those migrations. Differences between the two platforms. Google is still much faster in just about every regard. The tools available to us in managing it are more reliable than trying to do some PowerShell. One of my frustrations in the Microsoft environment is often that we need to make changes and then wait, I don't know, 15 hours to see if those changes were effective. Whereas with Google, it's pretty much instantaneous.
Yeah, and I guess that brings on to another question around the difference between the products is, you're obviously a sort of a trailblazing MSP in the Google Workspace era, whereas a lot of MSPs are very kind of Microsoft centric, and probably don't work with Google. I mean, do you think they're missing out by doing that?
I think they are. We've decided to get more googly over time. In fact, we've been working with Microsoft for roughly 7 years or so. But we find that it's hard to be exceptional in that space. There are partners out there, MSPs, that focus exclusively in that space, and they're quite good at it, or they're doing as well as they can with the tools they're given. Whereas I feel like we can be one of the best partners in the world related to Google, and we can take care of our clients better, which is really important. At the end of the day, I want to make sure when somebody trusts us to do something for them, that we can do it, and we're not going to run up against some sort of unknown technical roadblock, which is a lot more common on the Microsoft side.
Okay, and how does JumpCloud help with that sort of Google management?
Yeah. So JumpCloud really comes in and kind of providing a glue across all of these services. So we have a lot of clients that are, Google-based, but then they also have Microsoft Office suite, and then they are cross-platform. So they got a bunch of Macs, they got a bunch of PCs. And they're looking for something that will give them the ability to create a user once, have it show up on all of those platforms, and also provide the login across those pieces. So that's where we use JumpCloud, is to kind of bring all of those parts together and incorporate the desktop and mobile.
Yeah, and you mentioned Mac and Windows there. Are you sort of seeing a transition, or more, or is it so predominantly Windows or Mac, or are you kind of a mixed shop?
Yeah, I will say that being a Google partner so long, the people who choose Google tend to be a little bit more heterogeneous in the way that they go about laptops and desktop platforms. So it came from an agency world and a creative world. We still have a lot of creative clients. And those will have a kind of preponderance of Macs with a smattering of Windows. And then we've got more traditional clients that are, industry that is more Windows based. But even in those, invariably, you see, a decent amount of Macs, and they're not just limited to the graphics department like they were 15, 20 years ago. Now it's more than likely that the C-suite's using Macs because they use them in their personal life. They prefer them, and they've got the juice to say, that's what I want to work with. And the IT team has to figure out a way to support that. So it's pretty rare to find just a pure play one way or the other anymore. And I think that's good. I think it keeps everybody a little bit more honest. And, these platforms should be agnostic.
Absolutely. And is that generally corporate or company-owned devices, or is there a spattering of sort of bring your own device as well in there?
Mostly corporate owned, company owned. There is a smattering of bring your own. We see that a lot more on the mobile side than we do on the desktop laptop side.
Okay, that is interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little about your relationship with JumpCloud. Taking it right back to the very beginning, how did you first hear about JumpCloud?
I was trying to think about how it was that we first ran across. I did a search back through my old Gmail and saw that first interactions were back in 2018. And then I think we had our first good test client that we brought on in 2020. And so we've been working with them for a long time. I believe the very first things were related to trying to take care of Mac sign-ins on the local desktop, on the local laptop. There's a dozen different philosophies on the way to do that. Back in the day, we would have probably had them integrated into Active Directory, and they'd sign into AD with credentials that are tied to Active Directory. And we get fewer and fewer Active Directory controllers. In fact, that's one of the primary things we did for 10 years was get rid of that small business server that was running Exchange, AD, and all these other things, maybe 20 people signing in on that. And we eliminate the Exchange server, and they're like, this is awesome. This is great. We don't need that. We don't need to back it up. We don't have to keep track of it and deal with our own spam and all that sort of junk. And then they'd be like, well, but we've got to keep this server because it's got Active Directory on it. And so we started looking for solutions that would move away from that, but still give the power of being able to lock somebody out of the machine, being able to add new users to a machine once it's been provisioned, push some software if at all possible. That was kind of on the wish list back then. There are tools on the Microsoft side that were purported to do that, but didn't do it very well. And on the Mac side, there really wasn't that much. And what we really needed was something that was going to support both Macs and PCs on equal footing.
Okay, that's interesting. And then you effectively came to it with a specific need for a specific client, and then it sort of rolled on from there.
Yeah. The need was very obvious that being able to control logins on Mac devices and Windows devices without an Active Directory controller was the primary need. And that's where we started searching for solutions and looked at various things from, roll your own LDAP servers and yada, yada. But, there was really nothing that was this full feature.
Cool. Right. So talking about your MSP again, what are the main benefits that you think JumpCloud offers to you?
Well, from our perspective, we've got a decent book of business clients that we've worked with for 15 years. And so one of our opportunities is to go back into that client base and say, hey, how can we solve other problems for you? And how can we sell other services to you? And JumpCloud was a clear route for that, to solve a particular issue, which was the on-premise directory sort of stuff. So that was one of the benefits to us. And then secondarily, we're seeing more and more as people become aware of cloud directory services, or JumpCloud specifically. It has been a source of inbound communication where, hey, we see from your blog posts that you're familiar with JumpCloud. We've been on it for a little while. We're also Google clients. We've got these other pieces, and we're curious about, obviously we're coming to the same solutions. Maybe we should engage with a partner like you to see what other things we're missing out on, or conversations can be had.
Okay, and on that side, then, when people sort of pick up the phone or email you, these small to medium-sized businesses looking for help, I guess, I mean, are they generally got sort of in-house IT, or and you're working with them, or is it you are the in-house IT?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the client, but I would say for the most part, it is the single most capable person in the organization has been stacked with IT responsibilities. It's kind of that classic prove yourself capable and people will hold it against you. So it happens to be the one gal who knows how to add users in Google, or knows what an MX record is, or DNS. So, it becomes the person who's most technical within the organization, but probably not a real technical resource. And, we work with that person to get them to the point where they can, self-provision these things, understand what's going on behind the scenes, and be able to manage that day to day. We are not in kind of the break fix model. We're not in the, hardware support, my printers don't work, that sort of stuff. We tend to be more cloud services and how those services talk to each other. So we do a lot more kind of SSO integrations and helping them find the right product. And then we get that set up. If we do it properly, the solution is go get another computer, go and sign in. It'll take care of the rest of everything.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to what you mentioned at the beginning. You've not got that legacy of these on-premise servers and having RMM platforms to monitor these on-premise devices and with all these services now moving to the cloud. And the real challenge, as you mentioned, is connecting these services together securely, which is sort of the next generation MSP, which seems to be where you're at already, which is pretty cool. So moving on to the next section, this is around advice that you would give to a new MSP starting out. I suspect I know what you're going to say here, but if you were speaking to someone at an event and they're saying we're just starting an MSP, what would you kind of advice would you give them to get going?
Yeah, well, actually, I'll give a little bit of a jokey answer, but it's not a bad one. A friend of mine years and years and years and years ago told me, all you got to do is get one law firm. And then they will break up, they will sue each other, they will start new firms, and pretty soon you'll have 15 law firms. And actually that's borne out to be true. We do work with a bunch of law firms and they invariably split up and reconfigure themselves. I'll also say that's true with a lot of ad agencies. But in reality, as far as what I would suggest is to look at universality of your platforms. Look at the ability for things that everybody needs. Everybody needs email. Everybody needs communication. So that's your O365 or your Google. Everybody needs security, user management, being able to lock out an account or lock an account in one place and know that all the other access pieces are taken away. There's a lot of noise out there with various vendors who are looking to you to be a gateway to your client base. Look at the ones that are going to be more universally applicable. Those are also shown by, what have been around the longest, the Active Directory, the directory services. It needs to be modernized. email needed to be modernized. There's, I think I probably do 1 or 2 on-premise Exchange migrations these days. It's just not out there anymore. We still see a few hosted Exchange that are moving on, but in the end, everybody's pretty much going to wind up on Google or Microsoft for their communications platform. So video is another universal, whether that's Google Meet or Teams or Zoom. You got to think about those sorts of things and maybe not spend as much time on things that are nifty or you think people might need. Think about the things that everybody's going to need, whether they're a law firm or a manufacturing company.
Yeah, I was actually looking at your website earlier before we joined this call, and I saw that you had a quote on there or analogy on there that I've used really often personally around the generation of electricity and the kind of the analogy of that being a kind of an on-premise server. And I think electricity is now a utility, and the argument is that email is a utility, and you don't need to have your own email machine sat in the corner. And I guess it's the same with more and more services now, directory being one of them as well.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to ever differentiate you as an organization. Hey, we're going to choose this advertising agency because they got the best mail server. Like, no, that's not how it works. You just have to have that box checked. So do the things that you do really well and uniquely, and don't worry about kind of this underlying infrastructure stuff. And that's one other point I also like to make often is that sometimes when you're in with a business and they're like, well, that seems expensive or whatever, the unknown costs associated with traditional, or you can't know what they are. Maybe it'll work fine for 5 years, or maybe a hard drive will go out and you'll lose everything, or maybe 2 hard drives will go out, or the power goes out to the building and it fries the board. You just don't know those known costs. And I'll also say that we're often talking about coffee budget money here. If you're buying coffee for your employees, you're spending, X amount of dollars a month for those employees to get coffee. It's not healthcare budget money, which is much, much more expensive. So, if you're trying to solve a problem, pay for the tool and get the problem solved and know that it's solved well. So I like to kind of make those reference points as well.
Yeah, very important points. So if an MSP is listening to this, who's looked at JumpCloud, looked at the website and thinks this seems pretty cool, what would you sort of say to them to try and get them to book that demo or to have that call with us?
Well, I would say that it's funny, and all these tech companies, at the end of the day, it's still run by a bunch of people, at least so far. Who knows what's coming, but the relationships are the most important part. It's the get in on that demo, find out who did the demo, get with a rep. We've been working with Max for years now, and yes, JumpCloud's a great big company with lots of employees and stuff, but Max is our guy. So, knowing that Max is there and he's going to take care of what we need or put us in contact with the right person inside of JumpCloud, it's critical. And JumpCloud's done an excellent job of maintaining those relationships and having, consistency through the years with a partner rep that we can get a hold of and get the answers we need quickly so we can take care of our people. It's the same story with Google, where we have a couple of great reps, but they move on, and then we're kind of starting back over again. And Microsoft it's just never had any consistency. So I will say that being able to get involved with JumpCloud and get a client or 2 up and rolling and get a feel for the product is about the best way to get started with it, and know that you're going to be taken care of by the JumpCloud team.
Awesome. And I'll pass that on to Max. I'm sure he'll love to hear that. And I used to, yeah, absolutely. And I used to work in an MSP, and we had the same frustrations. You get different account managers each time, and they were changing all the time, especially with the sort of big boys like Microsoft. It was impossible to ever kind of build a relationship. So I think it's a key point, and it's something that I know that the team works really hard on that. So I'm glad to hear that that's sort of being appreciated by our partners. So thanks for sharing. And with that, I think that was the final question. So I'd just like to say thanks again for A, being a JumpCloud partner, and B, giving us your time today on some fantastic insights. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share what we've found. And I will also say that I think I've referred in probably 3 other MSP friends, partners that we work with and we trust. And I know one of them in particular is doing a great job with you guys. And so I'm excited about that, because sometimes a project comes in that's more aligned to the things that they do well every day. And I might say, hey, why don't you talk to this client? And I think it might be a good JumpCloud opportunity. So I love seeing the ecosystem grow and seeing more MSPs using this, because sometimes just seeing the right tool in use is about all I'm really after, more than it is to make a buck at the end of it. I want people to have the right tools that are going to be taken care of.
Yeah, and that's what's pretty unique about the MSP community, is that there is a lot of that sort of sharing that goes on back and forth around products and services. So yeah, it's a great place to be. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll speak soon.
All right, thanks again. Have a great day.